Good morning, everyone. I would like to warmly welcome you to this special debate session of our course, Water in Iraq, Past, Present, and Future. My name is Sarmad Latif, and I'm the instructor of this course. For today's debate, I ask everyone to stay focused as we all take part in this important discussion. So, in today's debate, we will be discussing climate change adaptation versus mitigation. Which one should be Iraq's priority? This is a very meaningful topic, especially for Iraq, a country that is already feeling the impact of climate change in many ways. And you know, just recently, Iraq is listed by United Nations as among the top 5 countries most affected by climate change when it comes to water. So before we start the debate, let me just briefly explain the two terms from a scientific point of view. Adaptation means adjusting to the new climate reality, like having better water systems, protecting the farmlands, and changing the way we use water, lands, and other natural resources. While mitigation is about reducing the problem at its source by reducing gases like carbon dioxide or methane that trap the heat in our atmosphere. Both are important and both are based on science, but today's question is that which one we should focus on first for the current environmental issues we have it in this country. So from the right side of the debate, we have Mr. Zaid, a software engineer at American University of Iraq, Sulaimani, Ms. Faiza, English literature student, Mr. Muhammad Yunus, senior software engineering student. And on the left side, actually they are focusing on and they will discuss climate change adaptation based on scientific evidences. In the left side, we have Mr. Muhammad Firas, a software engineer at American University. We have Ms. Zainab, English literature student, and we have Ms. Aya Kamal, business administration student. Okay, so this debate is not about choosing the right or wrong answer. Both adaptation and mitigation are important. But the question is that for the environmental condition of this country, which one we should give priority, which one we should focus on and work and make better efforts on it. So as a moderator, I will make sure each speaker speak in an equal time, and we will not only hear your personal opinion, we are here to hear some facts, some analysis, and some real-life examples about climate change adaptation and mitigation. So let's start for this exciting debate. Yes, Mr. Zaid, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for giving us a chance to discuss this important topic. We are the adaptation group, let's say, that are advocating for adaptation in Iraq. First of all, when it comes to Iraq, majority of us know Iraq as one of the 5 most vulnerable countries when it comes to climate change effect, and it's heavily affected by climate change. Otherwise, when it comes internally, Iraq is a petrostate country, heavily depend on petrol to, let's say, for its economy, otherwise agriculture. Now, when climate change affects a country, it does not affect only, let's say, one sector of it, but it does affect it in general. And how this is affecting Iraq is that agriculture, we are losing a lot of agriculture in Iraq. Based on reports, nearly, let's say, in the upcoming years, nearly 92% we will lose 92% of the agricultural land in Iraq if it goes like this, and maybe more. So by this, it affects the agriculture, which is heavily, let's say, contributing to the economy. And as majority of Iraq are, let's say, the one that are contributing to the economy are farmers. So this will affect their lives, the GDP, the economy, how we live, and everything. On the other side, when it comes to, let's say, adaptation, there are a lot of ways that Iraq could adapt to this, could, let's say, make some changes so we can, let's say, adapt to those climate change and high temperature that's currently happening. And as most of us know, Iraq's among the, like, Basra and Nainawa were among the, let's say, recorded the highest temperature degree in 2022, 2023, and probably this year also. So we really need to find ways that we can adapt to this. And since the cause is external and not really internal, because Iraq only contribute to only 0.4% of the, let's say, greenhouse gases that are contributing to the climate change. What does this indicate is that the cause of climate change for Iraq, even though let's say it's not contributing that much, but the external cause is very high on Iraq from climate change, let's say. And even though if Iraq, let's say, try to mitigate, it will not affect the let's say, the high temperature in Iraq that much because it's not the country that's causing this. That's why Iraq should go with adaptation, finding new techniques and try to adapt to the new, let's say, high temperature and what's happening with climate change. There are a lot of ways that we can go with, like having a good agriculture, good infrastructure, having recyclable projects and everything. And also, let's say, agreements and, let's say, with the neighboring countries, because nearly 70% of surface water in Iraq is coming from the two rivers, Tigris and Euphrates. And we can, let's say, make agreements with the countries so they can, let's say, it's being reduced a lot in, I guess, 35% decrease in the source of fresh water and like surface water in Iraq. So we can make agreements with the neighboring countries so we can, let's say, adapt to the droughts and desertification that's already happening in Iraq. And that's why we should advocate for adaptation more than mitigation, because the cause and the effect will be much more and better for us. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. Okay. As my friend mentioned, like I am from the team that goes for adaptation, and I have read a lot about it. That many organizations, like international organization, talk about how adaptation is more affectable more than mitigation, because mitigation takes a long time and it costs a lot. So Iraq is facing a very big problem. Like, it cannot be worse. Like, it's worse now. So they have to take a direct action, like a fast action to adapt with this problem, because they cannot solve it. Like, if they go for mitigation, it will take many years to solve this problem. But if they go for adaptation, this will help them to do it in less time and less cost. So if we focus on agriculture, because as Zaid mentioned, many people they rely on agriculture in their life. So agriculture is the most thing, and water, it's most thing that affected by climate change. Especially for the weakest group, weakest group in the society, like the people who live in villages and who depend on their the only source for survival is to agriculture. So this problem, they cannot wait for a long time to solve this problem, because they don't have anything else to depend on, to rely on for their livelihood. So they can, for adaptation, they can build dams to store water during the precipitation, in winter and the other seasons that we get rain. Rainy seasons. And also they can change the system of watering the plants. They can use drip system, and this can adapt with the scarcity of water and with the climate change also, that they can have enough water to give to their agriculture. And also they can depend on different sources of water, not only on river, like the surface water, or to the groundwater, which is about to, like we are about to lose it. So if they depend on different sources like surface and groundwater and the precipitation, this will help them a lot to adapt with this problem, because as Zaid mentioned, like it's not Iraq's problem only, it's global problem. And if Iraq goes for solving this problem, it will not be solved because it's not them who make this problem, because every country around will affect. We can, like they can use new techniques and building dams, and also they can grow the crops that are resistant with the drought and heat, so that they can survive, and it will also help their environment, like it will be green environment, which will lead to less use of water, green land, and also they will get their daily life income from it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I am Mohammed Yunus. I'm a software engineering student, and now I will present some strategies that are globally considered for climate change. So, one of the strategies that are planned globally is to incorporate wildfire planning into the community planning. I don't know if you all have seen that video. It was, I think, last night or the night before it. In Erbil, there was a very quick wind, a storm, that hit the city, and two of the phases in the electricity shorted, and it burned a tree like it was in 2 seconds, as it was a bomb. So we have to incorporate that into our planning in the city, and using blue roofs or green roofs in our houses. Why? Because we can, first of all, store the water in the storm seasons. Secondly, if we leave the water in the upper side of the building, it could evaporate and create a better weather for us at the same time. This can be adjusted in Iraq, so we cannot use the second solution in the blue roofs, but we can use it for planting trees and gardening our houses in the winter seasons. And one other solution that in the economy they were solving it is, like, in some areas we have salt water that infiltrate into the aquifers and make those salty with them. So we have to incorporate barriers between the saltwater aquifers and the sweetwater aquifers to prevent that also. And one other solution that they were thinking about was like a strategy to incorporate it into the community, was by modifying the water demand. How? By implementing the water usage rates. So, for example, if we are a community, we have a 100-meter house, square meter house, those people will be charged maybe less until some point. And if you are a business, you will be charged a little bit more because you are a business, you are producing, and you have to pay more if your business rely on water. One other solution that I was very amazed by it was like having hotspot maps and trying new and conducting pilot programs in these places. How this is done, I think the terms does not describe the strategy very well. So the pilot programs are focusing on planting trees, installing green roofs, as I mentioned, using reflective barrier building materials, reflective building materials, and creating shaded AUIS. So planting more trees, I don't know if any of you have the knowledge that Iraq has like 65,000 miles of desert lands, mostly in the south, in the western part of Iraq. So we have to plant some trees, I think they're called xerix, so the plants with the sharp ends in the deserts, because they consume less water and they prevent drought at some point in those lands, because it stores water and some animals can live on it. Installing green roofs, I have mentioned that. So the building materials, we have to consider those because it's very essential in this country. So in, I think it was in UAE, they have some kind of finishes on the sides of the houses. It makes the house cooler in the summer, and it makes it hotter in the spring. It creates shades by making the cement coming out a little bit. So that will be very easy and it will be very effective at the same time. I think that's all of I had, and thank you.
Thank you very much for very informative speech by the speakers, that they make sure about going with climate change adaptation rather than mitigation for our country. Now let's hear the other side of the debate, which they focus on climate change mitigation in Iraq. Yes.
Hello, my name is Zainab. Today I'm going to be talking about climate change mitigation. So while it's very important for people and governments to adapt to the constant changing climates, the situation will only keep getting worse if we as a society don't try to change the ways that we are living currently. So the ways we choose to develop our cities, to grow our foods, to live our lives, it has a direct effect on the quantity of emissions we put into the atmosphere. And then in turn, the level of climate change that we face and experience as people. So mitigation is very important because it directly deals with the causes rather than the consequences of the climate change problem. Hoping to prevent it from even happening in the first place rather than solving it after the fact has already happened. So we wouldn't really need to deal with consequences if we solve the root cause of the problem. So even though it does take a very long time to mitigate rather than adapt, people will only have to keep adapting to things because the climate will keep changing. So the more you adapt, if we keep living the way we're living currently, we'll have to constantly keep adapting, like it will never reach an end because the temperatures will keep changing. So the problem wouldn't really be solved until we decide to find the root cause and then fix it. So things like planting trees is considered part of mitigation. Things like investing in renewable energy and transitioning from fossil fuels, that's not only an adapting solution. It is part of mitigation as well, because it helps curb the extreme temperature rises and the water scarcity problems, which we've been talking about this whole time. So, okay. Also, the trees that was burned from an electric shortage that you mentioned. Mitigation is something that first of all, that's a fault in planning the electricity of the city. It's not really a fault of climate change. But even if you were to argue that the wind was a problem that was climate change based, you would solve the problem by figuring out let's say the times in which the wind is strong, and then like basically changing the way the electric, sorry, like the electric, I don't know what it's called. Power lines? Yeah, the power lines. When so like basically building them in better places where they're not near trees and other things that could burn. So that's not really a climate change problem. It's not really an adaptation problem. It's just a fault in planning the way the city is built. But yeah, even for the wind, that's not, even if it were something you can predict, that's not really something that you can solve by adapting. Also, for mitigation, the goals, according to the United Nations, the Intergovernmental Panels on Climate Change has urged that cutting methane emissions at least 30% by 2030 would help reach the goals of the Paris Agreement, which lowers global oil and gas methane emissions by 45%, and then it would achieve as much climate benefit in the next 20 years as closing 1,000 coal plants. So mitigation isn't only changing things that you're doing, it's also implementing new things. Like adaptation is not just implementing new things. Mitigation shares equal parts of building and changing. So yeah, that was my presentation. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Aya. Today I'll be focusing on one part of what's happening in Iraq that is actually really heavily affecting the climate change, which is that Iraq is depending too much on oil. And we all know this climate change problem is not only harming the environment, but also the people living in the environment and also the economy. And if we adapt to this climate change issue, it will be a short-term solution rather than a long-term one. And we all know things like climate change and water problems, their consequences happen in the long term rather than short term. So if we want to have a better future, a better Iraq, and a better weather, we should consider mitigation rather than adaptation. Now, let's start with my point with that focusing on oil, because 90% of Iraq's, let's say, economy depends on selling oil, exporting oil. And if we look at other countries, especially the developed countries and the countries that once were our customers, they're all now focusing on green energy, and they're trying to move away from focusing too much on fossil fuels. So first of all, we won't have customers, number one, and number two, we will be very, very behind. Now we're already behind, but like we'll be very behind. Now a lot, like for example, the EU, they're trying to focus on being green by 2050, and they're working on it. And we in Iraq, we're still very behind on that. And also, wait. And also, as again, if we only focus on like selling oil and like just extracting oil and burning a lot of fossil fuels, we all know that if it affects our Iraq in general. But if we focus on actually like going green, we will create more jobs. So we will switch from only heavily relying on selling oil, but also like we'll have more jobs, more opportunities for the next generation, and we'll have a better environment for the next generation. And this oil issue, as I said, it's affecting the climate change a lot. And I also want to answer Muhammad when he said like we should implement global strategies. Now, how can we implement global strategies when the rest of the world are way not above us, but like they're way advanced, and they're way in I don't know the right word, but like they're way ahead of us in this green energy and in this trying to be better climatically. How can we implement their strategies when we are literally so far behind? For example, you mentioned we should like plant a lot of trees okay, we will plant trees, but like we need water, especially in the summer. We lack water. So if we don't solve this water issue, how can we plant trees and water trees and be more green? Okay. And also you said installing green roofs. Well, okay, we can do that, but it costs a lot of money, and the economy is already really bad. A lot of like maybe not more than half of the economy, more than half of the population, they cannot afford to change their roof to green roof because it costs a lot of money. And if we don't fix the economy and like try to move away from selling just oil and move to other methods that we can make more money from innovation and all of that, then how can they do all of that, right? And also we have a great example. We have the UAE, we have Qatar, we have Saudi Arabia. They're also really rich in oil, just like us, and they once were also depending on oil a lot, but now they are moving, they are shifting. I'm sure all of you have seen Saudi Arabia's goal, like by 2030 they want to like stop completely from relying on oil and just like focus on tourism and other like solutions to make their economy better. And we can use those countries as an example or as a map to also follow in their footsteps, because they were once like us and they have similar climate weather like us, for example, extremely hot summers and all of that. And we can like follow in their footsteps and have a better future. Because if we look at, for example, those countries, the UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, like for example, 20 years ago until now, we will see drastic change. And their economy is flourishing. All of like the big companies are moving, and they're moving to the Middle East because they see it as a better place now in the world. So this is my part. Thank you.
It's not connected?
No, I mean, yeah, just try to hold it. It might be better.
Like this?
Yes.
Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Mohammed Firas. I'm also arguing for mitigation, as with my colleagues. As Ms. Aya said, we are relying too much on oil. So actually about 9% of the world's methane emissions are from Iraq. So we are producing a lot of greenhouse gases, specifically methane, from burning oil. But we need to use this oil because 90% of Iraq's economy is coming from oil, actually. So we need to shift from this because oil is not a stable source. For example, if another country found a cheaper way to produce more oil than us, more efficient way, then we will lose most of our income. And since other countries are also shifting to green energy, as Ms. Aya said, we might not be able to make enough money from oil as there will not be enough buyers. Another thing that climate change is affecting in Iraq is tourism and places like summer spots. I forgot what they're called in English. We call it masif. Yes, resorts. Because in our culture, we like taking picnics, especially in the spring. And if the picnic spots are all affected by climate change, if the plants are dying, if the lakes and the water is polluted, then these spots will lose a lot of tourism and they will not make enough money. And this tourism is actually very important for some local areas. Climate change will also not only affect humans, it will also affect plants and animals. And these problems are very hard to adapt to. So if the animals are not having a good time in agriculture, then we will produce less meat, less milk. We'll also produce less vegetables and fruits from the plants being affected by climate change. Mitigation will also have many good effects, such as if we invest in solar panels and we keep researching on them, then, or windmills, for example, or dams, many sources of clean energy, then they will be stronger and they will provide more power for us. And this is good because not only does it help the economy and give the people more energy, more stable energy, it will also reduce the climate change, which will directly lead to better agriculture and better tourism, or maybe indirectly, because these spots are affected by climate change. So adaptation actually will not solve all of these issues. So if a species went extinct, for example, we cannot adapt to this. We cannot bring the species back. So we should stop it from going extinct in the first place. And also agricultural land is also being lost. So about 40% of Iraq's area is actually desert. And if climate change is not mitigated, it will go above 50%. And this is too difficult to adapt to. Imagine losing 10% of our land from already having 40% not available to us for farming. And also, adaptation needs many techniques. So if you adapt to the issues in farming by producing new techniques and new equipment, that will cost money and that will need the people to have more skill in farming, which is an issue because usually our farmers in Iraq are not rich people, they are poor. So they may not have money to afford education in agriculture, or they may not have enough money to buy the tools that they need. Also, one final point, I think ethically speaking, it's better to prevent harm earlier rather than to deal with it when it comes. And that's it for my points.
Thank you very much for a very good explanation regarding the climate change mitigation strategy. In my point of view, I think both are very important. I think we should go with adaptation since we already have seen the impact of climate change. We as most of you mentioned, we already lost a huge amount of our agricultural lands. We already faced water scarcity. In some areas, we have faced water bankruptcy. So I think urgent serious action should be taken in terms of adaptation. And I think we should also go for climate change mitigation, especially for the long-term planning and management, because as you mentioned, if we do not mitigate or we do not reduce the impact of climate change from now, the situation will be worse and worse, and it cannot be controlled in the future. So we need to focus on both strategies. And here I think I will end the debate. Thank you very much for listening. It was a nice discussion regarding climate change adaptation and mitigation at American University of Iraq Sulaimani. Thank you and have a great day.